Good evening and hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Double 18 podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Nagishi, going solo tonight. I am very, very honored to bring back tonight's guest. We've had him on several times previously. The last time we had him was just around before the official start of the MLB season, when the Cubs and the Dodgers kind of started off in a awkward way, starting in Japan, if you all remember. And now that the regular season is over and World Series is taking place this Friday, we're going to get to a little bit of that, and also the state of the Major League Baseball as well. Welcoming back tonight to my live stream, it is Alex Patt, the writer with Cubby's Crib from Fansided. Alex, good evening, and thanks for joining me. Welcome back. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me as always. Good to be here.
Well, I appreciate it. All right. So the theme of tonight's show, of course, it is the looking back at the 2025 Cubs. We started off more than 6 months ago when the Dodgers and the Cubs started their season in Japan, and we kind of got into it a little bit. Now that the season is officially over, let's look back at the Chicago Cubs this year. 92-70, second in the division, 5 games behind Milwaukee Brewers. Once again, the Cubs. Actually, this year they were leading the division, but then they really fell hard for close to a month between, shortly after All-Star game and all the way into, August and December. They were already 7 or 8 games behind Milwaukee, who really caught on fire. And then after eliminating the San Diego Padres in the wild card, the Cubs came very close, fell 0-2, won 2 games at Wrigley Field against the Milwaukee Brewers before they succumbed to them in Game 5 of the NLDS. Looking back this year, Alex, on a AABCD grade scale, how would you grade the 2025 Cubs overall?
Yeah, I'd say I'd give them a B+. I mean, it was an overall good season, winning 90-plus games for the first time since 2018, making the playoffs for the first time since 2020, playing at Wrigley Field in the playoffs for the first time since 2018 with fans in the stands. That was obviously, big for the fan base in Chicago there. Obviously, you weren't good enough to go to the World Series. And, I mean, frankly, the Dodgers just showed that forget the regular season. As long as they get in, all their star power, when it's healthy, it's going to take over. And, there were holes on the Cubs that we saw all year. There were frustrating moments with the Cubs. So, no, it was not a perfect season, but it was a very good one, and one that I think we could look back overall pretty fondly, even with some of the holes and with some of the frustration that did come along with it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Even if the Cubs somehow miraculously won the divisional series against the Brewers, I don't know how much of a shot they had against the Los Angeles Dodgers in the NLCS there. And we'll talk about the state of baseball and the situation with the Dodgers in a little bit later in the show. Who would you pick as the Cubs MVP this year, regardless of the position?
It is kind of funny because if you asked at different times in the season, there might be different answers. Early on, you could say Kyle Tucker. Then you could say Pete Crow Armstrong. I mean, towards the end, I got to be looking at Nico Horner or Michael Busch, because those two were on fire at the end of the season. And Michael Busch was slugging home runs. Nico was just getting hit after hit after hit and playing spectacular defense. So I want to lean towards one of those two guys. I mean, Michael Busch hit 4 home runs in the postseason. Nico Horner hit well over 300 in the postseason. And Nico Horner was in contention for the batting title against Trey Turner towards the end of the year. He didn't quite get there, but the fact that he had an actual shot at the batting title, Nico Horner had his best year as a major leaguer, and it's hard to overstate the value of those two guys, because if they weren't hitting the way they were hitting, they wouldn't have gotten as far as they did. And, you know, I think too with Michael Busch is he was leading off most of those games, and he led off several games with a home run, including game 3 of the NLDS. They were down 1-0. It looked like, oh no, we're going to get swept at home by the Brewers. And then he immediately turned that tide around with the leadoff homer. He hit another one the next game. He had a leadoff home run in the series. It didn't really mean much, but hey, he did. And then he hit what ended up being a real big difference maker in the clinching wild card game because it was 2-0. He made it 3-0 and it ended up being 3-1, but it got a little dicey there in the 9th inning. So I might have to give it to Michael Busch with a little bit of honorable mention to Nico Hoerner.
Mm-hmm. So Craig Counsell finished his second year with the Chicago Cubs manager. And I think that this year, you know, his first full year being a Chicago Cubs manager, you know, he came over from Milwaukee, you know, kind of just getting to, you know, I don't want to say his feet wet, considering the years that he managed the Brewers with success and everything. But, you know, his years last year was, you know, no different than the year before when David Ross was fired. This year, he took the team to 92-70, and you know, I've harped on some issues and criticisms with Counsell and everything. You know, the fact that Brewers are still rolling, you know, back-to-back NL Central Division winners, even without Counsell, it kind of speaks volume about, you know, maybe I don't know if it's something to do with Counsell with the Milwaukee Brewers up there, or just basically that they're just either didn't like him or didn't like the way he left to go to the division rivals or not. How do you grade Counsell's second year, and how concerned are you that, you know, maybe the gap between the Cubs and the Brewers still hasn't really been all that close yet, you know, based on what we saw, you know, with the summer swoon this year?
Yeah, well, the good news is at least this year, if you look at the NLDS and you look at the regular season, the NLDS went to the brink. It went 5 games. I think if Cade Horton's healthy, they might win that series. Cade Horton going down was a real big blow, and it was a close regular season series. So, yeah, the Brewers finished us ahead of us again, and yeah, they squeaked by us in the NLDS. The good thing is, though, is I see a lot tighter of a gap now than it was for the last few years. And I think it's a testament really to just how good the Brewers are developing and scouting and putting their team together. And I think Counsell, kind of to your point, was much more acclimated with the organization this year than year one. Yeah, there were things that Counsell did that we all didn't like. There were some things where we're like, I'm not so sure about that, whether it was a lineup, whether it was an in-game decision. But consider the fact that you lost your ace at the beginning of the year, and then you had injuries to Shota for a while. You had injuries to Jameson Taillon for a while. You kind of had to do a carousel in the bullpen and figure things out. Craig Counsell helped figure that out with you. So I think that deserves a lot of praise. Overall, I think it was a solid year for Counsell. I know not everybody will agree. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying he's a perfect manager, but I think that you saw a better job from him this year because he kind of knew more what he was working with. He had a bit more of a say of what he was working with. And I mean, hey, look at what they got out of some of those arms that they brought in. Who would have seen Brad Keller and Drew Pomeranz doing what they're doing, you know? And that's tend to happen a lot under Counsell, is that type of reliever finding their way.
Mm-hmm. Looking at the some of the players, you know, we mentioned about, you mentioned that specifically, Michael Busch being the MVP this year. PCA, Pete Crow Armstrong, and Matt Shaw's up and down season has to be kind of discussed here. You know, PCA had a phenomenal start, went to the All-Star break game, well deserved. But then in the second half, he just completely tapered off. Matt Shaw started his season as a starting third baseman. He was actually on the Cubs team when they played the Dodgers in Tokyo. But shortly after, he got sent down, was called up about a month or so later, stuck with the team, had some nice hits throughout the season. But overall, his batting average was, you know, slightly above the Mendoza line. You know, he played some really great defense. I won't discount that. But looking back at their up and down season, let's start with PCA. I jokingly refer to him as a lefty Javi Baez, and ironically, he was traded from the Mets when the Cubs traded Javi Baez to the Mets.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems as though he just could not lay off a high fastball, or the pitch that was inside. He was just basically swinging at those things, and then was slamming the helmet and bat in frustration more so than anything else. Looking back at PCA's season, excuse me, Alex, what do you think is the biggest issue with him, and how do you think that he can correct that next season and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of mentioned it with like chasing the high fastball, chasing some of those inside pitches as well, breaking in. I feel like sometimes he gets a little too amped up there, and we've seen in big RBI situations, kind of trying to play hero ball when you really don't have to.
Right.
Those are the.
He's a guy who plays with the sleeves on his emotions, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely, and we've seen that over and over. And the thing that I tell everybody, like with Matt Shaw, who we'll get to in a minute, 23 years old. It was his first year being on a true contending team. It was his first year being in the national spotlight. So there was a lot of new things coming his way, a new recognized level of stardom that people hadn't seen before. He was out there in center field in Atlanta at the All-Star game. He was getting interviewed on the Fox broadcast. So a lot of attention was on him. And, when you're a young player and there's a lot of attention on you, I think that whether he'll admit it or not, and I'm sure he could, it could affect how you approach mentally. So I think it's just kind of a growing step for him. It's just another growing moment for him this season. There's a lot of young players who have ups and downs early in their career. We've seen it with PCA, and we're seeing it with Matt Shaw too. So I think his approach, just kind of staying in the box, being a bit more disciplined is going to be big for him. Even if he's not a big on-base percentage guy. I mean, let's say he's got an OBP in the future of 300, 310. Well, if you're hitting 30 home runs, stealing 30, 40 bases, and at least you're making a little more contact and having some better quality at bats in certain situations, that's going to go a long way.
Mm-hmm. And what about Matt Shaw? Do you feel encouraged about his future, or do you feel like he's, he might be more of a, what do you call it? The maybe super utility infielder kind of guy with, with some pop, but overall his batting average will likely stay low because of his funky baseball swing.
Yeah, I think it's just a work in progress. He was a rookie this year, and we saw the leg kick, and we've seen how the leg kick doesn't translate to Major League Baseball like it once did. And we saw good moments and bad moments, like you alluded to. I mean, like, you see the bat speed. He's clearly has the capability of being a good hitter. It's just a matter of getting more used to MLB pitching, identifying pitches better, maybe cutting down on the swing in certain situations, and maybe just identifying what pitch is coming out of him better, because there was a stretch where he was hitting very, very well, and then I think players adjusted to him, and that's the ebbs and flows of a rookie. So I am very encouraged, and like you said before, the defense is spectacular. I mean, really, really good, and that doesn't just go away in terms of like having the skill. Sure, when you get older, you can't physically do it, but he's 23 years old too, so that glove should be around for a while.
My guest tonight is Alex Patt, the writer with Cubby Scripts, from Fansided Network. Stephen Negishi's doing solo tonight. All right, let's look at the little bit more on the broader scale of this team. Look at the starting pitching. This team really got a great mileage out of some of the, unsung heroes. Matthew Boyd, Colin Rea, really did their job. Once Justin Steele went down with a Tommy John surgery. Of course, Cade Horton was called up. He had his ups and downs, but toward the end, before his injuries, he was probably the number one Cubs pitcher on the rotation. Looking at the rotation and then into the future next year, we hope that, Justin Steele will be fully back from another Tommy John surgery, although it's not known whether he will be ready. by the opening day. Shota Imanaga's injury really impacted his pitching. You know, he was giving up home runs almost every inning, every time he started. You know, and it does kind of feel discouraging that maybe, you know, I think his option is up this year, correct?
Yeah, it is, and it's a little complicated because the Cubs could decline one thing, he could decline one thing. If he declined one thing, they could match with like a qualifying offer. So it gets a little tricky with his contract. But yes, like he signed for those guaranteed years, and now it gets a little complicated. Yeah.
Right. And then Matthew Boyd, after being named the All-Star, which unfortunately he did not pitch because of the scheduling conflict with his next start after the All-Star game. He struggled really down the stretch as well. What does the rotation look like in your opinion? And do the Cubs really need to, I don't know, perhaps get some more, you know, pitchers who can get swings and misses? Because I just think that the Cubs guys, you know, they don't have a lot of guys who can throw, you know, maybe over 95 or even close to 100 miles outside of Danny Valencia, who's a reliever, by the way. But on the starting side, you know, I was so frustrated with some of the times where, you know, either the starting pitcher couldn't punch out a batter, or ended up walking and they ended up leading to big runs and stuff like that. How important is the, you know, fixing this rotation this offseason?
Yeah, you know, I've been saying what you just said. You need a bit more swing and miss. You need a bit more power in that rotation. And that begs the question of whether or not the Cubs go after a guy like Dylan Cease or Framber Valdez on the market. Ranger Suarez is going to get a huge payday. So I think that is worth asking. And I think the Cubs are going to be working with that budget that they have this offseason and identifying that kind of pitching. And I mean, listen, it's hard to say what Justin Steele is going to be like when he comes back. We know he's a workhorse. We know he's going to try to come back as strong as ever. And luckily in this day and age with the rehabilitation and the medical fields that we have, it's much easier for a pitcher to come back not just as good, if not better after a big injury like that. But until that happens, you truly never know. So best case scenario is he does come back and he is his dominant self again. And then you have Cade Horton as your number 2. And if he keeps doing what he's doing, man, I mean, that is a special pitcher right there. And then that's where you want a dominant guy, I think. That's where you want more swing and miss. That's where you want another guy that can go and overpower some guys. And then you kind of look at the rest. You could say, okay, if you have those kind of pitchers in your top 3, then you feel pretty good about Jameson Taillon as your 4. Yeah, I think Jameson Taillon he's not overpowering. He's not flashy, but I think he's one of the most underrated players on the Cubs. And he has given you so much quality work ever since that real poor start he had to his Cubs tenure back in early 23. Ever since like July of 23, he's had like a mid-3s ERA, and he's just given you quality start after quality start. He's a workhorse. He perfects his craft. He added that power changeup this year. We saw that in the postseason. That looked really, really good. So if you add another really good arm, a dominating arm in there, and you get a healthy Justin Steele and a healthy Cade Horton, and Jameson Taillon is your 4, and then maybe Shota's in there, maybe Matthew Boyd, then you're feeling a lot better, I think, because overall the pitching did do a good job last year, but there's a lot of questions going forward into next year. Is Matthew Boyd going to repeat what he did last year? Is Shota Imanaga going to be around? And if Shota Imanaga's around, is he going to keep having the same issues that he has? Can you rely on Colin Ray? I mean, I think Colin Ray is really more of a swing man. He just had to pitch a lot this year because he was needed. He did a very good job. Like, he was a very unsung hero. But ideally, you want somebody more dominant as a regular in that rotation and let him be either a 5 or a swing starter. So I definitely think there's going to be some changes to the rotation. There's a lot of questions for the rotation, but you're not completely void of talent, especially if Cade Horton keeps doing what he's doing.
So who do you think is the odd man out in the rotation, if like you explained? Matthew Boyd or Shota Imanaga? They're both lefty.
Yeah, they're both lefty. I mean, if you're just going based off last year, it's hard to take Matthew Boyd out.
Yeah.
But, is Matthew Boyd going to be healthy 2 years in a row? His track record says he hasn't. And Matthew Boyd has pitched in certain reliever situations before where Shota Imanaga really hasn't. He's had an opener for him every now and then, but if you look back to like Cleveland, like when they were in the playoffs with Matthew Boyd, he had certain roles on that pitching staff. I mean, the nice thing about modern baseball is you look at your pitching staff as what it is, a pitching staff, realizing, maybe you're not going to have, even if everyone's healthy, the same 5 starters all the time. Maybe you need to call upon a certain guy in a certain situation, or you don't have a set order every time out of a rotation or a bullpen. I mean, that's what the Tampa Bay Rays have done for a long time, and that's what other staffs are starting to do. So you do kind of have that luxury of being able to kind of work with that mentality. And that's what Craig Counsell had to do when there were injuries this year.
Mm-hmm. So you would probably think that Boyd would be better off because of his workload experience, and just probably hope that Shota gets himself fixed, whatever was the issue last year.
That's how I see it right now. If Shota, assuming Shota Imanaga's here next year,
Yes. Okay. Bullpen got a real good mileage out of a lot of their pitchers this year. Some of the guys, like you said, were really came out of nowhere, and a lot of them were unsung heroes, bailing out Cubs in many, many situations. Brad Keller, Caleb Theobar, Colin Ray also, did the job as well. They had to kind of mix and match and then get rid of some of the guys and bring in some of the guys here and there. But, Andrew Kittredge did his job after being acquired from the trade deadline, etc. Daniel Palencia kind of took the closer role before he got hurt, and then had to kind of lose that job in the postseason and gave way to Brad Keller there. Are you confident about Daniel Palencia as a closer, or do you feel like it's a job that's going to be determined in spring training next year between him and maybe Brad Keller?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say he's a candidate. I wouldn't give him the job right now. I think that, like you said, you see what happens in spring training. You see how this offseason plays out. Because, I mean, he's got the big stuff. He can throw 100 plus. He's got a breaking ball. And there was a while where he was looking just dominant. It's like, okay, this is looking like a closer. And then the cracks started to begin to show. And, I was in attendance for one of his meltdowns. Actually, the meltdown, he got hurt against the Nationals. And you did see a little before that. You're like, oh, he got the save, but there was a lot of hard contact in that appearance. So I think you definitely have him in the mix, but you definitely want to diversify your options because you don't want that to be the sole option. I mean, I give Palencia a lot of credit. I liked his role in the postseason where he came in the middle innings, and whether he needed to put a fire out or whether he just needed to pitch the 6th or the 7th, I kind of liked him in that role in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. Turning over to hitting side, obviously the number one question is the future of Kyle Tucker. I think he's done with the Cubs. I just did not like how, whether it was him or the Cubs, how they handled his injury situation, which kind of prolonged his slump, which kind of, contributed to the Cubs, melting down and losing their divisional lead. And then well into the playoffs until he started hitting it against the Milwaukee Brewers, but it was kind of too little too late there. Assuming that, Kyle Tucker has played his final game with the Chicago Cubs like you and I do, what happens to the right field? Because I know it's easy to put Seiya Suzuki back, but Seiya Suzuki, despite his career high number in home runs and RBIs, he also struggled a bit too toward the end. Mm-hmm. And people always kind of have questions about his defense. Mm-hmm. Of course, Owen Casey, their top prospect that got called up when Tucker was, had to set out for a few games to get his head cleared. Unfortunately, had a concussion injury. Hopefully, it's nothing serious or career threatening.
Yeah.
What do you do with the right fielder situation, assuming Kyle Tucker is gone?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a number of things you could try there. I mean, if they really believe in Owen Casey, that might be your guy. And I'm not saying Owen Casey will or will not work out. You just don't know what the heck you're going to get from him. His first taste of the big leagues was a very small one, so you didn't get much of a sample size to see him in the majors. Now, if you were to move Suzuki back to right field, that would be my preferred path if you were to sign Pete Alonso, because he's on the market, and you say, okay, Pete Alonso, here's your DH. Him and Bush could trade off being DH. You put Suzuki in right field. I don't see that happening. That's just one of my dream scenarios, because if you lose Kyle Tucker and you need power, well, there's 35, 40 home run power right there in Pete Alonso. Again, I don't see that happening, but if you were to sign Pete Alonso for him and Bush to switch between first and DH every day, that's where I would put Seiya back in right field. If not, if you go with the Owen Casey route, then you keep Seiya as your DH for the time being, because I think that when you look at the impacts that the Cubs are going to make in free agency, it's probably going to be pitching. Maybe you do trade for another bat. That's very possible. They did it with Kyle Tucker last year, so maybe that happens again. But I think that right now, with the options you have as they currently are, if they believe in Owen Casey, that could be your right fielder. Unless, hey, maybe Owen Casey ends up being in a big trade this offseason. Not out of the question.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any interest in Kyle Schwarber, or that nostalgic stuff doesn't hit you like it used to be?
I would love Kyle Schwarber back. Don't think it's going to happen.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see it.
Is it because of the his style of play, or just basically because he will be asking for more money?
Yeah, I mean, I think that he's going to get paid pretty good penny, and I just, for a bat, I don't see the Cubs spending that on a bat. If they're going to spend that type of money, it's going to be on pitching. That's what I believe. And the other thing too is, you remember what they've said philosophically for the last number of years is run prevention, right? Well,
Right.
Kyle Schwarber doesn't really fit that mold, if you get what I'm saying. Because if Kyle Schwarber was your DH and you put, say, Suzuki in right field, I'd love that. Yeah. It's kind of like what I said about Pete Alonso, but again, I don't see either of that happening, because here's the thing. The truth of the matter is that the last few years, Wrigley Field has been very pitcher friendly. We've seen the wind blow fly balls down. Especially happens to the left-handers because it blows off the lake. So it comes in from right field. So, yeah, it's like with Cody Bellinger 2 years ago. I didn't think he had a bad go, but it's like the conditions were not just good for him, whereas you compare to this year, he had the shirt porch at Yankee Stadium to hit at. Very, very different. Where with Kyle Schwarber, his power is so insane, he can hit through that wind. Like the way he destroys the ball, he can hit through that wind. So I'd love that 40-plus home run power back from Schwarber and the guy that can walk. Like I said, it's just I don't think it happens.
Now, the Cubs have a very interesting prospect, and Moises Ballesteros, who did made his Major League debut. Pretty, kind of like built like Kyle Schwarber. And plays catcher at AAA Iowa. His defense is a bit of a question mark, but man, he can really, really hit.
Yeah.
What do you do with Moises Ballesteros? Is he a trade bait for you, or does he still kind of like have a future with the Cubs, in your opinion?
I want him to have a future here because I think that bat is legit. Like, again, it wasn't a huge sample size, but we watched that bat and you're like, ooh, it's a good. And, you mentioned Kyle Schwarber, he might have that nice power, but I think it's a bit more of a balance with him. He might not have 40-plus home run like Schwarber, but he can hit a little better than Schwarber. He'll a better batting average. Yes. Yeah. And I was there for his first career home run, the one he hit right to Anthony Rizzo in the bleachers, and he hit that the other way. That was into the left field well, and that was gone the second it hit the bat. And, when he first came up, his first at-bats were a little rough, but then watching him adjust the way he did, pretty impressive. at the major league level. And you're going to have to trade guys to make big trades. Frankly, I would rather trade a Casey or a Kevin Alcantara, who's another option for outfield, before Moises Ballesteros. And that's hard because Moises Ballesteros doesn't really have a position, but that bat it looks legit. And I just don't want to lose it. Again, I'm not one to completely prospect hoard, but I don't want to give everybody away either.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. Especially when you have a talent like Ballesteros. Great teams find ways to make sure that the talent is fit in many shape or form. And
that's what
the
they
Cubs
did in 2016. Yeah,
absolutely. So hopefully the Cubs aren't quick to judge Ballesteros as a guy who without a position. So we have to trade him and get something in return quickly just yet. So I know we were talking about Michael Busch earlier. He got benched a lot, especially when, the left-handed pitchers or left-handed relievers came in. As great as Michael Busch did this past year, I don't know how can he take that next step without having to figure out how to hit, lefties, whether it's starters or, whenever the relievers come in, you ended up losing valuable opportunities and let somebody else take that for you. What do you think is the plan here or with Busch here on, figuring out the lefties? Or do you feel like the Cubs are just kind of like already made up their mind and they're going to always platoon him when there's lefties?
I think the end of the year showed you that he could hit lefties a little better, and I think he will get more of a chance to hit against them going in the future. It might not be every single time, but I think that going forward, you can look with more confidence in him hitting against a lefty than you could at the beginning of the season. Because even look, in the postseason, they started their best 9 every day, and Michael Busch was in there for virtually every game outside of the one game where Justin Turner was your opener lefty or opener righty facing the lefty pitcher. But then Busch, predictably, as we all could see, came right into the game. So I do think that in the future, there will be more opportunities for him to hit against lefties. So yeah, I mean, he's earned that right, I think, to get that chance. The overall numbers against lefties weren't nearly as good, but I thought you saw progress as the season went on.
Right. And it also has to come from Counsell himself to, commit to giving him that at-bat, which unfortunately wasn't always the case last year.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Alex Patt is my guest tonight, writer for the Cubby Script, to talk about the Cubs and the MLB this year. Let's look at the World Series now, switching over. World Series preview. It's the Dodgers and the Blue Jays. Anything stood out to you before leading up to the World Series? Anything on the NL side and the AL side? The Mariners had their greatest opportunities, but came up really short on those last 2 games against Toronto, which they actually started off, with a bang, taking 2-0 lead in Toronto there.
Yep. I'm happy for the Blue Jays. I like the Blue Jays, but I was kind of rooting for the Mariners just because they had never been there before.
Me too.
And I wanted to see Cal Raleigh play in the World Series for having the greatest season ever as a catcher and one of the greatest offensive seasons of this generation. So I was really hoping that would be rewarded. And, the Mariners, not only have they never been there, but before a few years ago, it had been 20 years since they even made the playoffs the last time. So I was really hoping they'd get something there. But again, it was great to see the Blue Jays too. I mean, George Springer hitting the home run was great. Seeing Vlad Jr. in the World Series is going to be great. And very different, the AL and the NL. I mean, the Dodgers just bulldozed through the National League playoffs. They lost, one game? They lost a single game. They swept the Reds. They won 3 of 4 against the Phillies. And then they swept Milwaukee. And Milwaukee was the best team in baseball. The Dodgers made them look like a JV team compared to that. I mean, it was you saw Shohei Ohtani have maybe the greatest game in the history of baseball. 6 dominant innings and 3 home runs. And then look at the rest of their pitchers. Look at what Glasnow did. Look at what Blake Snell did. Yamamoto with the complete game. Just
right.
The Dodgers' one big weakness is their bullpen, and they didn't have to worry about that in the NLCS because their pitchers were just dominating and going so deep. And then they were just getting the timely hitting. I mean, they were just pouncing on it. It was just like a reminder that the Dodgers are far and away the best team, and it's not even close. They could coast to the regular season all they want. They know when they get to the playoffs, it's like the Chiefs and Pat Mahomes. They could coast once they get to the playoffs, they turn it on, and that's what the Dodgers are doing.
I have the Dodgers winning this one in 6 games. Who do you have winning this one?
I'm with you. I think it's going to be Dodgers in 5 or 6. Can the Blue Jays win? Sure, but right now it's hard to bet against the Dodgers. I mean, they got to be the betting favorite. It'll be interesting because this is Canada and United States. This is West Coast and all the way up in Toronto. You know, could you imagine if it was just Seattle and LA? Well, that's just, a few states north. This is across the country and above it. So this travel is going to be, it's going to be quite the travel for both teams, going from Toronto to Los Angeles.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the current state of baseball. It seems as though a lot of people aren't happy with the Dodgers dominating, like you said. It seems as though this kind of like the precursor to 2027, when many people expect that work stoppage is going to hit baseball. Now, to be honest, the Dodgers are just kind of like going by their books and doing what any team would do who is committed to winning. They're right, and to me, it's not a bad thing. The Dodgers aren't doing anything illegal by any stretch of the imagination.
Nope.
And I don't understand why people are openly complaining about it. We have, in my opinion, Alex, that I think that the baseball has some of the worst owners in baseball. Actually, not just baseball, in all of professional sports in the United States.
Oh, yeah.
You and I,
look what the Pirates are doing.
We are really, really been frustrated with the lack of commitment from the Ricketts. That's number one. In the same division, we have the Pittsburgh Pirates, always been a perennial losers. Paul Skeens is probably going to be traded in a couple of years now. Mm-hmm. I can see that happening.
Yep.
Milwaukee, despite their winning, they're already talking about taking offers for Freddie Peralta now. All of a sudden. Yeah, it's kind of weird. Let's see. Tampa Bay, I don't think it's a bad ownership. I mean, considering they have won, playoff games and even won a American League East in that loaded division. But they just can't seem to find a home, and they're always trading away big time stars for prospects, which has actually helped them keep afloat and competitive, of course. And then another White Sox, and then another Chicago owner. Jerry Reinsdorf. He also owns the Bulls, and we all know, he's, he doesn't give a damn at all. Angels with Artie Moreno.
Art Moreno,
it's a bad one. Oakland with Pete Fisher. I don't know
that's probably the worst.
That's probably the worst, of course, because Vegas, Sacramento, the Vagabonds, pretty much right now. And then Minnesota with the Pohlads. That's a pretty bad one there, too, if you want to point it out. There are so many bad owners in baseball, if you ask me. So, can we at least agree that Dodgers winning this and dominating is not such a bad thing, and that people are openly complaining about it? Even the Yankee fans are up in arms about the Steinbrenners not fully committed to putting it up and winning.
Hal Steinbrenner doesn't spend like George Steinbrenner did. Let's just say that
absolutely.
George would do whatever it took to get what he wanted, literally whatever it took.
Absolutely.
And Yankee fans came accustomed to that. I mean, I think just a lot of fans envy what the Dodgers are doing. They wish that their team would commit to getting an Ohtani and a Mookie Betts and a Freddie Freeman or a Yoshimura Nanamoto or, even a Tyler Glasnow or a Blake Snell type.
They're linked to Kyle Tucker already, so
they'll probably get him. Yeah. And I mean, you look at the teams that have unlimited pockets these days, it's the Mets and it's the Dodgers. Those are the teams that where money really isn't much of an object for either of them. And yeah, I think a lot of fans want to see their team do what the Dodgers are doing. I mean, how can you not?
Right. So do you feel like, I feel like before we discuss about the cap, we need to have like a salary floor. I know Clint Hurdle said that a couple of days ago.
Yes.
And I kind of agree. You have to force people to spend money, because having a cap isn't going to force the, the bad owners that I just mentioned going to be, forced into spending at all. I think the floor is more of an effective method, but I don't know if the players will go for that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think a salary floor is what you really need. I think that it being incentivized to spend a certain amount is what really should be happening, because you look at some of the lowest payrolls like the Marlins and the A's and even the White Sox this past year, and it's just like, how can you even call yourself a major league team when your spending is that low?
Exactly.
When there are guys with bigger contracts than your payroll. It just doesn't look good on you or your organization. And, for the most part, it reflects in the results on the field. And sure, Milwaukee does a lot with less in terms of budget. And, Oakland for the longest time played Moneyball with Billy Beane, and they spent nothing and were able to win. The Marlins have had up and down. They've had some success, but through a lot of these years, they haven't been doing a lot of winning. And Oakland, that was once the Moneyball team, isn't winning at all anymore. So, I mean, yeah, I think you really do need a floor in Major League Baseball. You really do.
A couple more minutes with Alex Patt, the writer of Cubby's Crib from Fansided Network. So let's kind of look around the major leagues right now and kind of get a preview of the offseason. I live in Michigan. Detroit Tigers is obviously the big story out here. The future of Tariq Skubal has been brought up numerous times throughout the season. And now that it's off season, we found out that there's a huge discrepancy between him and the Tigers in terms of the money discussion.
Yep.
What do you think happens? Do you feel like he's going to be traded? And if so, who do you think has the leg up on getting him? The Mets?
Yeah. I know it looks really bad now, but something tells me they'll figure it out. I mean, you would have to be so terrible as an organization to let that walk. You really have to. Unless they just can't come to an agreement, then there'll be a number of teams in on him. Boston's always willing to make big trades. They seem to be comfortable doing that, and it tends to work. Look what they did with Garrett Crochet. Could you imagine those two lefties in your rotation? Could the Yankees be in on that? Could, God forbid, the Dodgers be in on that? I mean, there would definitely be teams that would be lining up to try to make a trade for him. I don't think it would be the Cubs, but there would be a number of other teams out there. Maybe like a Texas Rangers even would be in on that. Maybe I don't know how great the farm system is in Houston, but maybe Houston, if they lose Framber Valdez, would try to be in on that. So right now, I think that it will get figured out, but I can't say for sure.
The Phillies are kind of like has reached the end of their. I don't want to say, their championship window, but there are the oldest team in baseball out there, and I think their team president or GM admitted that Bryce Harper is no longer an elite player, and Schwarber is a free agent, and of course, and they're talking about maybe moving on from Trey Turner. Nick Castellanos' future is pretty much over. It seems like he kind of wanted to be out there, done with that manager Rob Thompson for a while as well. What do you think happens with Philly?
Yeah, I definitely think that they'll shuffle some things around. Like, it's not going to be an all-out fire sale. I think they're going to try to win next year, but they are going to do some shuffling around. So I wouldn't be surprised if Castellanos is traded. I still think they do find a way to re-sign Kyle Schwarber, although I can't say for certain. But I think that it's very, very possible that they will dedicate their money to re-signing him. while letting other guys go. They're like Nick Castellanos, I think, is a perfect candidate for them to trade away. You get the money off the books, and I think that he's getting to that over the hill area. I mean, those last few years, he hasn't been quite as good as he once was. He's not bad, but he doesn't give you any defensive value. He never really did.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not quite where his peak was.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Let's see. I'm gonna try and figure out. Let's see the New York Mets. They missed out on the playoffs. They spent so much money. They got Juan Soto, who had a very up and down season. What do you think is the Mets' plan outside of Tariq Skubal? What do you think the Mets are plotting? If you're Mets, what do you think you got to do now?
I mean, they might throw a lot of money at one of those starters that are available, whether it's a Suarez, a Cease, or a Framber Valdez, maybe somebody else. But Steve Cohen will spend whatever money it takes. So it would not surprise me if they gave the bank to one of those guys.
Mm-hmm. Pretty interesting. Over on the American League side, the Yankees, they fell short also. The other team in New York, that kind of has become like a little bit of an afterthought, which is kind of hard to believe I'm saying this. But, Cody Bellinger is a free agent. He's opting out. There's that spot there. When you look at the Yankees, what do you think is their biggest issue that they have to address in the offseason?
I feel like they might need another consistent bat in there, whether that is bringing Cody Bellinger back or not. And then, maybe you beef up your bullpen a little bit because they got Devin Williams and he was very, very up and down last year. So I think they may try to make a few pitching moves, and then they either try to sign Cody Bellinger or bring another bat in there because, I mean, obviously you have Aaron Judge. We all know how good he is. And then you have a great guy in Giancarlo Stanton, but his health, it's just it's not there. He's hurt a lot. He misses a lot of time. So getting another big slugger in there, I think, would be good for him.
Mm-hmm. And for the Cubs, let's kind of do a quick summary. You think it's the pitching that they have to focus on this offseason, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think they need a little bit of both, but I think what they're going to be focusing on with free agent money is pitching.
Mm-hmm. If you were to spend one pitcher, who would it be?
I really like Framber from
Houston
Astros. Yep. Mm-hmm. I really like him. I'm coming out with a piece about the pros and cons of Dylan Cease. But Framber, that guy at the top of his game, he is really, really, really good.
Are you worried about, there was this one incident where he intentionally threw it to the catcher after the batter was, took a time off or whatever. I don't know if you saw that video. And then Valdez had to kind of issue a statement saying he didn't do that on purpose because he hated the catcher or not. Are you kind of worried about that kind of I don't want to say knucklehead-ish personality, or do you feel like maybe that was just one of those things that just kind of got overblown there?
Yeah, I mean, things happen. Human emotion can get the best of all of us. So, I don't think about it too much, honestly, but he's going to cost a lot of money. He's going to cost a lot of money. Now, what'll be interesting to see is if these starting pitchers go high AV, low years. So it's like a 2-3 year deal, but you're paying $35 million a year.
Mm-hmm. Would you take a swing at Alex Bregman again, or you think it's already over since he didn't sign with us last year?
If he's willing to take another shorter deal, high AV, I'd be tempted. I don't really want to give him a long-term deal at this point. If they did and they thought it was going to help, I wouldn't be upset about it, but I think it's worth exploring. I think it's worth kicking the tires on. I just think it's going to depend on what the terms and conditions are with him because he is getting a little bit older. And last year, I think he did teeter off a little bit towards the end, and you just don't know how durable he's going to be going forward.
Mm-hmm. And what about the White Sox this offseason? Our crosstown rival, Matt Ishbia, the owner of the Phoenix Suns, has kind of jumped in and has the first rights of refusal to eventually take over the White Sox from the Reinsdorfs. They took a pretty nice step after losing the most games in the MLB history this year, with Brett Venable as the manager. Do you see them making that move with Ishbia in putting in some money, or do you feel like they're going to continue to lose a lot and just make that small incremental improvements on the field?
I think they'll spend some money. I'm not saying they're going to spend Mets or Dodgers or Yankees money by any means, but I think they'll spend some money because I think they could be competitive next year. With the young players that they have in the system and a better system in place, I actually think they have a shot at being competitive next year.
Mm-hmm. Well, Alex, listen, thank you so much for your time tonight. Great talking with you again, looking back at the Chicago Cubs this past year. Hopefully we'll do this again before the end of the year. Maybe we'll have a very good idea about the free agency and the winter meetings that will likely take place in a month and a half or so. And, please make sure to follow Alex on his great work at the on X, and then also at the cubbiescrib.com on Fansided Network. Alex, thanks for joining us, and have a wonderful evening, and we'll talk to you again, hopefully before the end of the year again.
Sounds good, Steve. Thanks as always. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
And thank you very much for joining us on this Wednesday evening. We'll be back again this Sunday night with Ken Fang and I, mostly around 7 o'clock Eastern, to look back at the this week's NFL games, as well as college and any other. And of course, the NBA has started with the NBC and ESPN media coverage as well. Next Tuesday, I hope to have Harrison Graham, who, by the way, full disclosure, I was supposed to do a live stream with him last night, but I completely forgot about it. So next Tuesday night, 8:30 Eastern, 7:30 Central, Harrison Graham from Chat Sports on YouTube will be joining me to talk about the Chicago Bears and all the news around the NFL. So have a great week, everybody, and we'll look forward to seeing you this upcoming Sunday with myself and Ken Fang. Till then, have a great week and have a great evening.